Welcome to the pre-retirement seminar. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and so you should see the presentation. And if you're not seeing the presentation, let me know in the Q&A panel. And like I said a minute ago, if the box with my head is in the way of the slides, you can just move that anywhere on the screen that you like. Okay, so before we start, are there any pressing questions or issues that anyone wants to get out of the way? You can go ahead and type those into the Q&A panel. And I'll just wait a minute to see if anything comes up. No questions so far. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and get started, and you all just let me know if you have any questions as we go along. Okay, so welcome to the pre-retirement seminar. So because this is Acera's pre-retirement seminar, and I assume that you are getting ready to retire because you're attending the seminar, you probably have a couple of questions in your mind. And those questions are probably questions like, what do you need to know? And what do you need to do? So I'm going to try to answer all of those main questions for you, and then answer any detailed questions as you have as we go along. To do that, what I've done is I have organized the presentation into a checklist. So we're going to talk, the first thing I'm going to do is help you understand your Acera membership. Then I'm going to show you how to get an estimate of your retirement benefit. And that's going to take probably the first half of the presentation, those two topics. And then we'll take a break, maybe about 10:15, but I'm not sure exactly how it'll go. It might be more like 10 o'clock. And we'll take a break about halfway through. And then while we're on the break, I can answer any lingering questions that you all have. And then in the second half of the presentation, I'm going to help you verify your retirement eligibility. I'm going to help you choose your retirement date. I'm going to talk about the process of applying to retire, how that works. I'm going to tell you about the other benefits and help you understand those, like medical, dental, vision benefits, and a few other benefits that we have. And then a little bit about life events and signing up for Acera News. Okay, so let's jump right in here. I'm going to skip over this slide because due to the circumstances of the deferred compensation representatives being super busy with what's happening in the market, they weren't able to join us this morning. Okay, so let's talk first about understanding your membership. So we'll just do a few basics. So who is Acera? So one way to think about Acera is that it's the Alameda County Employees Retirement Association, so it's an acronym. But there are a lot of people that make up Acera. So there are about 93 of us that work at Acera, and what we do is we provide retirement, disability, and death benefits to our members. So that's all of you. And you are members because of where you work, the position that you work in, and who you work for. So you work full-time, or at some point you worked full-time in a retirement eligible position for one of our participating employers. So these are public agencies, including Alameda County, that use Acera as their pension system. So as an Acera member, you contribute to the retirement fund. So your employee contributions go into the retirement fund. Also, your employer is contributing to the fund on your behalf. So every time you get paid, you're going to see a percentage of your paycheck come out of your check and go into the retirement fund. And that is your employee contribution to Acera, and your employer also makes their contribution at the same time. So then what we do is we take that money and we invest it all over the world, and we earn a lot of interest on that money. And those three things combined allow us to have the total Acera fund. So we have this big pool of money. So then what do we do with that money? So meanwhile, you are earning credit toward retirement. So you're working in your job for your public agency, and you're working, and while you're working, you're earning credit toward retirement. At some point in the future, you're going to retire, and once you retire, you are going to collect a monthly lifetime retirement allowance for the rest of your life. So you cannot outlive your retirement allowance. It's going to be paid to you month after month after month, every month for the rest of your life. So let me show you, since we're talking about pension basics, there's some milestones in your career that are important to Acera, and that'll help you understand a lot of the details that we talk about later. And so this is kind of like a high-level overview of those milestones. So the first milestone is your date of hire. That is the first day that they told you to show up to work. Now, if you started out immediately in your full-time retirement eligible position, what happens is 2 weeks went by, and then the first day of your second pay period, that's your date of entry to Acera. If you started out part-time, or you started out service as needed, or under contract, one of those other things, as soon as you got your full-time position, then the first day of your second pay period, that becomes your date of entry into Acera. And that is when you start earning your credit toward retirement. Okay, so the next milestone happens after 5 years. After 5 years, you are considered vested in the retirement system. And vested just means guaranteed. So when you're vested, you're guaranteed the vested benefits. You're basically guaranteed the guaranteed benefits. And I'll show you what those are in just a minute. So then after you're vested, at some point in the future, you hit the next milestone, which is you become eligible to retire. So there's usually a year requirement and or an age requirement, and I'll go through all those in the second half of the presentation. But once you pass that point, then you're actually eligible to retire whenever you see fit, because the next milestone is the retirement date of your choosing. So you choose your retirement date, and I'm going to help you do that later on in the presentation. Okay, so it doesn't end with retirement, because you're going to receive lifetime retirement allowance, and because it's for your lifetime, there's another point on the milestone, which is your death. So sorry that that's on here, but it's inevitable. The reason it's on here is because of a couple of things. One, like I just said, this is the period where you're collecting your lifetime retirement allowance, and then after that, there's another milestone on here where your beneficiary or beneficiaries could receive payments every month for the rest of their life, continuing payments, which we call a continuance. So that would go to a beneficiary that you name. That would be the last milestone on the milestone chart. Okay. So onto this. So you all have I sent out a link to the retirement worksheet. And the full worksheet, let me see. Well, I'll just okay, let me see here. I was gonna share the full worksheet, but you shall already have it. Okay. So this is just one section of the worksheet. This is the first section of the worksheet, my career timeline. So what I'm going to help you do is fill this out as we go along. And this is brand new. I just created this, and the reason I created it is because I've been doing this seminar for about 10 years, and I have a lot of people come in up to me after the seminar, and they say, "Oh, it was great. I totally understand everything now. You explained it in such a great fashion. It's my third time." And so I'm like, well, if it's your third time, did I explain it that well, or was it that memorable? So what my thinking is that this is your takeaway. So you can record down the dates that you discover as we go through the dates and different numbers that you discover as we go through the presentation, and you can write those down so you have a takeaway to. If you happen to know your entry date, go ahead and put the entry date in. But if you just know the year or around that time, just go ahead and put that in. So we'll just fill that in. And then the next thing that you can fill in if you want is if you happen to know what your projected retirement date is, you can put that in there. If you don't know what it is yet, because you're waiting for me to tell you like how to figure it out later on in the presentation, you can wait till then. Okay. And one more thing that might happen, you might write it down right now, but then you may just change your mind based on something that you hear in the presentation. So, you can feel free to mark it out later as well. Okay, so just real quick about vesting. I mentioned that it happens after you earn 5 years of service credit. So basically after you work 5 full-time years. And it's the vested benefits, the guaranteed benefits are guaranteed by state law. And what they are is the monthly lifetime retirement allowance, which is number 1. Then there's an annual cost of living increase to that allowance. And then there's a $1,000 lump sum death benefit, which is a burial benefit, basically. It's kind of a small benefit, but there are other death benefits that are associated with some of the different retirement options that I'll show you later on in the presentation. Okay, so now that you understand your vesting date, that it's 5 years after your entry date, you can simply add 5 years to the entry date and put a vested date in there. And the vested date is not that important. So if you just want to get close, you can write that in there. Okay. So the next kind of basic information about your pension is what tier you're in. So you are in a tier that is based on your date of entry into Acera. The first thing that you're going to do is figure out which one of these lines you're on. Okay, so if you are a safety member, you're going to be looking down here. Safety members are sheriff's deputies and probation officers and other sworn officers, and general members is everyone else. Okay, now if you work for the housing authority, you have a special date here. If you work for Livermore Area Recreation and Parks District, I didn't put you on here because you almost never attend the seminars. I usually go out to you to do the seminars. So you can check our tier page if you have questions about that. Okay, so now that you know which arrow to follow here, you'll notice that the tiers are separated by a date. So for general members and safety members, you're in tier 1 if you entered Acera before July 1st, 1983. So on or before June 30th, 1983, you're in tier 1. If you entered after that, you're going to be in tier 2 all the way up until January 1st, 2013. So if you enter January 1st, 2013 and beyond, you're in tier 4. So if you entered between these two dates, then you're in tier 2. Now for the safety members, there's an extra date in here because July 1st, 1983 marks the beginning of tier 2B, but then October 17, 2010, people who entered after that are either chose to be in tier 2C or tier 2D. And so you made a selection for that. And then if you entered after January 1st, 2013, you're in tier 4. And then for housing authority employees, you're in tier 1 if you entered before September 30th, 2011. And then the same, all the tier 4 dates are the same, January 1st, 2013. Okay, so now you know what tier you're in. Oh, and one more thing for the safety members, you may have a split tier, which means if you started out doing a general member job before you got your safety member position, you have a split tier, so you will have earned some service credit under the general tier and some service credit under your safety tier. You could put both of those in on the worksheet, or you can mark both of those on the worksheet, or you could fill out a separate worksheet for each tier. So go ahead and mark which tier you're on the worksheet. Okay. So now that you understand a little of the basics of your membership, I'm going to help you get an estimate of your retirement benefit. So in retirement, you are going to get a % of your highest salary for each year of service. And that is captured in this formula here, okay? So you get a % of the highest salary that you're making before retirement, you're going to get a % of that in retirement. And the %, and and you're going to get a percent of it for each year of service, full-time service that you do. Okay, so let me help you understand that a little bit better. Let's say that based on your tier, the percent of your service that you're going to get is 2%. And I'll show you the full range of all of the percentages a little bit later, I think in a few slides. But let's say that it's going to be, you're going to get 2% of your highest salary for each year of service. And let's say that you have 20 years of service. So you work for 20 years, you're in 20 years of service credit. 20 full-time years, you're in 28 years of full-time service. So you're going to get 2% of your highest salary for each one of those 20 years of service. So if you multiply that together, you're going to get 40% of your highest salary in retirement. So we're going to multiply your highest salary times 40%, and that's going to become your retirement allowance. So let's say that your highest salary is $5,000 a month. So we multiply the 40% times the 5,000, and that gives us 2,000, and that becomes your retirement allowance. So that's how that works. That's the pension formula. So we're going to calculate that formula for you when you go to retire based on those three numbers. So let's talk about each one of those numbers in a little detail. So the first number in that formula, the first factor, is the age factor percentage. So what you're seeing here is a chart that depicts some of the age factor percentages. Now, we already figured out what tier you're in, so you know your general or safety, and you know which one of the tiers you're in. So you can ignore all the other numbers, and you can just look at your column. And so most of our members tend to be general tier 2, so I tend to use that as an example. So you may notice a few things when you're looking at your column. You may notice some things. You'll notice that the numbers get bigger the older you are when you retire. Okay, so these are the ages at which you would get those. So let's say that you're a general tier 2 member and you retired at age 60. We would come over to the chart, we would go 60, age 60, 1.92%. And then we would put that in the formula and multiply it by the other two factors, and that would be your age factor percentage. If instead you retire 62, you would get a higher age factor percentage, 2.09%. And so the numbers keep going up the older you are when you retire. So the longer you wait to retire, the older you are, the higher the percentage you're going to get in the formula. You'll notice that the blue box represents the highest age factor that you can achieve in each tier. So for tier 1 members, 2.62% at age 62. For tier 2 members, 2.43% at 65, and so on and so forth. You'll also notice that if you retire above that age, you just get the maximum age factor percentage for your tier. So if you retired at 66 or 67 or 68, you would still get 2.43% if you were a tier 2 general member. Now, another thing that you might notice is that I skipped a bunch of the ages, and that's because there are so many age factor percentages that they won't fit on the slide, because the percentages increase every 3 months. So it's actually every quarter year. So if this were the full chart, let's say 50, 50 and a quarter, 50 and a half, 50 and 3/4, 51, and so on and so forth, and there'd be a slightly higher age factor percentage for each one of those increments. And it's based on your birthday. So if your birthday is January 15th, for example, 1 quarter after your birthday is April 15th, you go up 1 notch in the chart. Then you don't retire yet, you wait until July 15th, that's 2 quarters after your birthday, you go up another notch in the chart. October 15th, another notch in the chart. So it's every 3 months based on your birthday. So it's not the 15th, it's based on whatever your birthday is. So if your birthday is January 2nd, then it would be April 2nd, July 2nd, and so on and so forth. Okay. Any questions on the age factor percentages before I move on to the service credit? If you have questions, go ahead and type those into the Q&A. Okay, no questions. If you have a question, or if you're not done typing it yet, I'll see it pop up and I can come back to it. Okay, so we talked about the age factor percentage in the retirement formula. So let's talk about the service credit. So it's years of service credit. So you're going to start earning service credit on the first day of your second pay period. And then you're going to earn service credit all the way until you retire or when you stop working. So some people stop working before they retire. That's when you stop earning service credit. Okay. So you're in service credit during that entire time. So you're in service credit during regular work hours, during earned vacation and all the other types of leave, sick leave, management leave, comp time, holidays, floating holidays. You don't earn service credit. If you're ever out on leave without pay, you're not earning service credit. If you purchase extra vacation on top of your earned vacation, you're not earning service credit while you're out on that purchased vacation. If you sell vacation, which means you take your earned vacation and you sell it back to your employer for cash, you don't earn service credit for it, but you do get cash for it, and that won't affect the service credit component of the formula, but it could affect the salary component of the formula, which I'll talk about when I talk about the salary factor in the formula. And you also don't earn service credit for overtime, on-call time, and standby time. So there are some types of time that are eligible for you to purchase to increase your amount of service credit, because the higher any of those three numbers are in the formula, the higher your retirement allowance is going to be, because it's multiplication. So the higher your age, the higher your salary, and the more service credit you have, that's going to make your retirement allowance go up. So if you have any of these types of time, this is not a complete list. You can read more of the types of time down here. It's basically times where you were employed, but you didn't earn service credit that you maybe could have earned service credit for if the situation was different. It's kind of like a summary of what those types of time are. Airtime is not allowed. So if you're just trying to buy extra service credit, that you can't do that. So I'm not going to go deep into purchasing service credit because it can take a while, and I want to emphasize some other topics. If you have questions about service credit, you could ask me at the end of the presentation, or you could check out our purchase page. It's pretty detailed. Okay, so what happens to your unused sick leave? And this is under the topic of service credit. So when you go to retire, if your first day of retirement is the next day after your last day of work, so that means you're going straight into retirement. So let's say that you're in active pay status all this week, and this is your last day in active pay status, even if you're on leave, and this is your first day of retirement. That means you're going straight into retirement, and we will convert your unused sick leave to service credit. So you're going to get half of your unused sick leave as service credit. Now there's a cap on it. So it's saying the sick leave up to the cap, and the cap is in your memorandum of understanding, which is in your MOU. If you've never seen your MOU, I think they're all posted online, or you can ask your HR department for a copy of it. So we take the amount of sick leave that you have up to the cap, and we divide it by 2, and that tells us how much service credit to add to your amount of service credit that you've earned. Now, for most of the MOUs, the cap is 125 days of sick leave. Sorry that this line got out of place here. It should be down here because we're dividing 125 days of sick leave by 2. And that would equal 62.5 days of service credit, or about 12 work weeks, if you're working a 5-day work week. So, so if you're in that situation where your cap is 125 days of sick leave and you happen to have that much on the books, then you would get an additional 12 weeks of service credit, basically. If you are in Acmea, they have no cap, and if you're unrepresented, they follow Acmea, and there is no cap. And I don't know any of the other MOUs off the top of my head. Okay. So any questions on service credit before I move on? Okay. Not seeing any, but like I said, if they pop up, I'll answer them as they come up. Okay, so let's talk about the highest average monthly salary part of the formula, since we've already talked about the age factor percentage and the service credit. So for tiers 1 and 3, and tier 3 is Livermore Area Recreation and Parks District only. For tiers 1 and 3, so what we're going to do when we're looking for your highest average monthly salary is we're going to try to find your final compensation period, which is your period of highest pay from your entire career. So for tiers 1 and 3, it's your highest consecutive 26 biweekly or 12 monthly pay periods. For tiers 2 and 4, it's your highest 78 biweekly or 36 monthly pay period. So what that means is that essentially for tiers 1 and 3, your final compensation period is your highest year of pay. And then for tiers 2 and 4, it's approximately your highest 3 years of pay. And since our goal is to find your highest average monthly salary, what we do is we take the total amount of pay that you made during either that 1 year or that 3 years, and to get an average, we simply divide by the number of months in that period, 12 months or 36 months, and that gives us the average. And that becomes your highest average monthly salary that we use for the formula. So what types of pay go into your highest average monthly salary? Your base pay goes in there. And for all these types, we're talking about gross pay. So it's your gross base pay. And then some people have footnotes or other pay codes. The other pay codes are sometimes known as footnotes. These are other types of pay that are usually based on skills or education. And I can't tell you off the top of my head whether if you have one of these pay codes, whether it's in or out of this equation, because there's like 1,000 of them. But what you can do is you can go to that page, acera.org/paycodes, and you can pull up the PDF for your employer, and it will tell you, it will list all the pay codes, and it will list them by description and by number, and it will tell you yes or no whether the pay code is in or out of the equation. And that's how you know whether this is going to be included. But I can't tell you that overtime never counts. And if you don't know what the numbers of the pay codes are, because you just have the descriptions, you could ask your payroll manager for more info. Okay, there's a couple of other points here to consider. So vacation sales and vacation cash out. Let me see. Okay. So tier 4 members, you probably saw this slide already. You could take a snooze because this does not apply to you. So this is just tier 1 and tier 2. Okay, so here's how this works. You have, if you sell vacation sale or vacation sell, that is when you sell vacation back to your employer while you're still employed. So you're in active status, you're earning vacation, and you decide, oh, I'm going to take some of my earned vacation, I'm going to sell it back to my employer, and I'm going to get some cash. And then you see your amount of vacation that you have accrued go down in your paycheck, and you get extra cash. That's selling vacation. Now for vacation cash out, also known as vacation payoff, that is simply you have earned vacation that you haven't used by the time you stop working and or retire. So it's just on the books. You haven't used it yet. And if you still have vacation left over on the books when you stop working and or retire, then your employer is going to pay you for it at that time. And so they're going to write you a check at that time. And so you're going to see that money. Now, if you get paid for your vacation either through selling it or through cashing it out, and that payment happens during this final compensation period, remember your highest year if you're in tier 1 or your highest 3 years if you're in tier 2, that is, let me see, I just added these slides, so I haven't gotten used to them yet. So if you get paid, okay, so these these two things combined are your total vacation compensation during this final compensation period. Okay, so now we look at your total salary during your final compensation period. Now, if you get paid, if you have vacation compensation during that final compensation period, that is going to make your total salary during that period go up. Your total salary during your final compensation is going to get bigger because you got paid for extra vacation. That's going to also make your average salary during that time get bigger as well, because your total salary is bigger, so your average salary over that time is bigger. And because your average salary is bigger, and your average salary is one of the multipliers in the retirement formula, that is going to make your retirement allowance get bigger. So the bottom line is that if you get paid for your vacation either by selling it or by simply having it on the books when you stop working or retire, that's going to increase your retirement allowance. How much is it going to increase your retirement allowance? So these are approximate numbers, and so you can't hold us to these. This slide is simply to give you an idea of what the impact of getting compensated for your vacation is to your retirement allowance. So if you're in Tier 2, I'll start with Tier 2 first, and you get paid for this amount of weeks of vacation compensation during your final compensation period, that's going to make your retirement allowance go up by this much. So for example, a lot of people will get 8 weeks of compensation included in their vacation compensation included in their highest salary. That's going to make your retirement allowance go up by about 5%. If you were able to get as much as 15 weeks, that would make it go up by about 9.6%. So you can see that you've probably heard about people doing this. Maybe you've read this on our website before. The reason that people talk about this and that they're interested in this is because this is an immediate increase to your retirement allowance at retirement and for the rest of your life. And so it's something to think about. Now for Tier 1, you can see the numbers get higher faster just because of the shorter final compensation period. Okay. But there is a cap on your vacation compensation that we are allowed to include in the salary calculation. And the cap is defined by state law. So let me show you what that cap is going to be for you. Okay, let me see. I'm getting a question here. Okay, thanks for those questions. I'm definitely going to handle the second one, and let me get back to the first one in just a minute, because I have some more explanation about this, and I think that might help answer some of these questions. Okay, so there's a cap on your vacation compensation that is includable in your salary by state law. So that cap is going to be different whether you're an Alameda Health System employee or whether you are an employee of one of the other agencies. So let me do the Alameda Health System employees first, and that will, and then I'll do the other employees. Okay, so you go back to your worksheet. So this is a snapshot of the back page of your worksheet. And what you do for the Alameda Health System employees is you take your hours of PTO you earn per pay period. Okay, so this is your, so you put that in here. Now, if you're in Tier 1, what you're going to do is take those number of hours of PTO that you earn per pay period, and you multiply it by the 26 pay periods, and that gives you your limit in hours. For people who are in Tier 2, you take that and you multiply it by 52 pay periods, and that gives you your limit in hours. So in order to maximize your retirement, what you need to try to do is have your limit, whatever that is, on the books when you retire. Okay. So for example, if you make 6.7692 hours of PTO per pay period, and you're in Tier 1, that would be 176 hours. For Tier 2, that would be 352 hours. So that would be your limit. And that was what you would try to have on the books when you retire when you, if you want to maximize this. And this is purely optional. You don't have to do this, but I'm just telling you what the limit is in the law that we have to include. So if you were to have that many hours on the books when you retire, then we would have to include that in your salary, and we would have to increase your retirement allowance, because that's the law. That's what the law tells us to do. Okay, let me check out this next couple of questions that I got. Okay. Yes. Okay, so regarding the question about missing the slide on the benefit increase due to vacation sales, I am sorry about that. I added those slides recently to try to make this more understandable, and I neglected to upload that to the website. So what I'll do is, after the presentation, I'll take this version of it and I'll go ahead and upload that. So I apologize for that. And then there's a question about talking about how working part-time changes each one of these things. Yes, I will cover that. Let me think if I want to tell you anything about that. I'll talk about that when I'm done talking about the salary, and then I'll talk about how the age, the service, and the salary changes based on part-time work. Okay, so I'll leave that question open so I remember to come back to it. Okay, so that's how the Alameda Health System employees find their limit. Now, for the other, everyone else, county and other employees, you work for the county or one of our other participating employers, what you're going to do is you're going to put in the worksheet how much vacation you earn per year at retirement. And then you're also going to put in how many weeks of vacation your employer allows you to sell in retirement. Or I'm sorry, how it allows you to sell per year while you're still working. So, for example, maybe you've been working for the county for over 21 years, so you're earning 5 weeks of vacation per year. So you put that in there. And then your employer's rule, they have a rule somewhere, it's in their policies or somewhere, of how many weeks of vacation they will let you sell per year if you want to. Your payroll clerk knows what that number is, if you don't know what it is. So let's say that it's 2 weeks of vacation per year, so you would put that in there. So if you want to sell 2 of the 5 weeks vacation you earn per year, they will let you, is the rule in this particular example. Okay, so now what we need to do to figure out what the limit for you is, we need to go to the chart on the next slide. So what you do with this chart is, this is the earned column and this is the payable column. So you find where you land on this earned column. You earn 3 weeks per year or 4 weeks per year. And it's how much you will be earning at retirement. So maybe you're about to go over the mark into 21 years and start earning 5, that's what you would use. As long as that's the amount of years that you're retiring with. Okay, so then let's say that you're earning 5 weeks per year, and then you're allowed to sell 2 weeks per year. So then you come over here to this side, and if you're in Tier 1, your limit is going to be 4 weeks per year of vacation compensation that can be included in the salary calculation. If you're in Tier 2, it's going to be 8 weeks per year. Okay, so let's take a Tier 2 example. And so that's what you would put in. Your limit would be 8 weeks. So you put that in the chart. Now what you're looking at is, if you're trying to maximize how much vacation compensation, the amount of vacation compensation that gets included in the salary, you're going to want to get paid for that much vacation either through selling vacation or through cashing out vacation. Okay, And one of the questions that I have here is it better to sell vacation or cash it out in the last 36 months before retirement? Okay, so I'll go ahead and answer that one. It's better, so if you haven't sold any yet, it's better to just cash it out if you can get up to your limit by cashing it out. So if you can do that, you would just cash out 8 and you would sell 0 because you don't need to sell. So 0 plus 8 is 8. Okay. Now there's a different scenario where, let's say that in a different example, you're earning 5 weeks per year at retirement, but you are allowed to sell 3 weeks per year. Well, that's going to make your limit go up based on the charge. So the reason for that, so if you go back to the chart, it's going to be 12 weeks. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. There's an additional rule that you need to know about, which is that your employer will only cash you out when you stop working and or retire for 2 times your accrual rate. Okay, so in this example, 2 times your accrual rate is 10 weeks. If you have more than 10 weeks of vacation on the books when you retire, you will lose anything over 10 weeks. If you have 11 or if you have 12, those extra 2 weeks, those will just go poof. Those will disappear. And you won't get anything for them. Okay. So if you're in that situation and you want to maximize how much vacation you can include of this vacation compensation you want to have included in the salary calculation, you're going to need to sell vacation while you're still employed if you can't get up to the limit. So this example of this person, they can't get up to the limit because they're limited to 2 times their accrual rate is 10. So they're going to cash out 10 weeks of vacation, and then they're going to sell 2 weeks of vacation while they're still employed. Okay. So if you're in that scenario, that's what you would have to do. So if I go back to the previous slide real fast, this person does not have to do that because this 2 times this person's accrual rate is still 10 weeks. And so this person could have up to 10 weeks on the books when they retire, and they would get cash for all the 10 weeks. And then 8 weeks worth of that, we would have to limit. So we would just include 8 weeks worth in the salary calculation. So they don't have to sell any. It's if you're in this scenario right here, where you can't get up to the limit because of this 2 times your accrual rate limit, then you would have to sell in order to maximize this. Now, to that question about whether it's better to sell vacation or cash out vacation. So let's say that this person doesn't do this, and let's say that they sell more vacation and cash out less vacation. So let's say that if we moved, let's say that we moved 4 weeks of this over here. Okay, so we have 6 and 6. Now, they sold 6 weeks of this vacation, and maybe they sold it at the beginning of that 3-year period. So that is, because we're talking about a 3-year final compensation period. So if they sold it at the beginning of that 3-year period, that was 3 years ago. They're probably making more money now because they've gotten cost of living increases, perhaps some raises. So if they instead wait and cash that out, they'll make a little more, they'll get compensated a little bit higher for that. And that's going to increase the amount of money that we put into the calculation. And that's going to make the salary a little bit higher. Now, if you haven't done that, if you've been selling a bunch of vacation because you heard that you should be selling out, you should be maxing out and selling your vacation your last 3 years of work, that's fine. That's totally fine. And if you simply want to take the amount that you've already sold in what is going to become your final compensation period, and then just simply have the remainder left over as on the books when you retire to get up to that limit, that's totally fine. It's not going to be that huge of a difference. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. So it's your choice. If you want to sell vacation and then cash out less, or if you want to cash out more and sell less to get up to that limit, that's your choice. Okay. Now, one thing I want to say about this is that sorry, I lost my train of thought. So I was talking about getting up to the limit. Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay, so if you have already sold a bunch of vacation and you cash out a vacation and you're like way over the limit, that's fine. That doesn't matter. You're still going to get all the money. Okay, so you're going to get paid for all that vacation. So let's say that this person here, they had been selling 3 weeks of vacation every year for the last 3 years, 9 weeks. And let's say that they cashed out the maximum that they're allowed to cash out 10 weeks. That's a total of 19. Now, we would have to limit by law how much of that money can go into the highest average salary calculation. We would limit it down to 12 weeks, okay? So we would take the highest. We would take 10 weeks that they got paid at the end because they probably got paid more for that. And then we would pick 2 of those 9, and that would become the 12. But they still got the cash. They still got paid for the entire 19 weeks. They got paid for the 9 weeks that they sold over here while they were selling. They got paid for the 10 weeks over here that they cashed out. They got to take all that money to the bank. It's just that we have to limit how much of that money gets included in the salary calculation by what the law tells us, which is 12 weeks in this example. Okay. So I hope that answers your question about whether it's better to sell vacation or cash it out. It's slightly better to cash it out, but if you would rather sell it, yeah, that's fine too. Okay. So there's one quick question that I'll answer. Is Tier 2-INT different than Tier 2? No, that's just Tier 2 general. So that's just Tier 2. The INT refers to the word integrated, and it means Social Security integrated, which means that simply that you're participating in the Social Security system. So it's just a way we keep track of that. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let me see if I have any more explanation. Okay, this slide looks like a mistake, so you can skip that. And then Tier 4 members, welcome back. If you have any more questions about how vacation affects salary, you can go ahead and ask them because I don't have any more slides on that. I will right now address how each one of the factors works when you're part-time. Okay, so with the age factor percentage, going to part-time when during your career doesn't affect anything. You just get the age factor that you get when you retire. For the service credit, it will affect the service credit because you'll be earning service credit more slowly. So let's say that in your last 6 years before you retire, you go down to half-time. Well, that would be the equivalent of 3 full-time years. And so by the time you retire, after having worked that 6 years, you will have earned 3 years, 3 full-time years. Regarding the salary is not affected by part-time work. So a lot of people will like to go down to a different position that maybe pays less but has less responsibilities when they're getting to a retirement to kind of ease into it, and that's totally fine. That will not, or go down to part-time, take less hours. That will not affect the salary. Going down to part-time won't affect the salary component. If you're still getting your, actually, let me split those apart. Those are 2 different examples. Sorry, I'm mashing those together. Let me stick with the part-time for example. Okay, so let's say that you go down to part-time toward the end of your career. So let's say that you're making your highest rate of income at the end of your career. So like your highest hourly rate, basically. But let's say your last 6 years, let's say you're in Tier 2, your last 6 years, you go down to half-time. So you're not working full-time, you're working half-time. Now, when we go to do the calculation, when we go to do the salary calculation, we're going to look for the highest 3 years of pay, consecutive pay, but it's the highest 3 years of full-time equivalent pay. So if you're working full-time, it's the highest full-time 3 years of pay. If you're working part-time, it's the equivalent of 3 years of full-time pay. So what we're going to do is we will smash those 6 half-time years worth of pay periods together to get the equivalent of 3 full-time years. And so the bottom line is that going down to part-time does not affect your salary component. So then regarding the idea of going down to a position that pays less, yes, well, it kind of won't affect the salary component of the calculation, because if you're making less the last few years of your career, what we're looking for in the final compensation period is the highest periods, the highest pay periods throughout your entire career. So we're going to take what your final compensation period is and shift it back to the past, to when you were making more money, and that's going to become your final compensation period. Now, how does that affect the vacation? So if you sold vacation back then, that would make your salary go up, but probably cashing out vacation may not make your salary go up, because your final compensation period is going to be in the past sometime. So if you cashed out vacation at retirement, then that wouldn't affect the salary, because that compensation wouldn't be included. And one more thing about final compensation periods is that some people ask me whether it's lined up with the fiscal year or the calendar year. It's not lined up with any of those things. It's lined up with your highest pay period. So if you're making the highest pay periods, your highest pay at the end of your career, and let's say that you're working full-time and you're in Tier 2, it's simply going to be your last 3 years of work. So you're going to take your retirement date, and you're going to go back into the past 3 years, and that becomes your final compensation period. Okay, so I have one question here. So does the highest compensation period include the full-time equivalent salary plus vacation cell if you sold vacation in the past? So yes, it's going to include vacation cell if you sold vacation during that final compensation period. So if you're in Tier 2, it would be your highest 3 years. If you're in Tier 1, it'd be your highest year. So if you sold the vacation during that time, yes, it would be included. If you sold vacation before that, some people start selling vacation way early. None of that vacation that you sold way in the past is going to be included if you're making your highest pay now. Now, one thing that selling vacation can do is change what your final compensation period is. So let's say that you're in Tier 2, and your last 6 years of work, you earn the exact same pay. No cost of living increases, no raises. You just earn the exact same pay last six years of full-time work. Now, the first 3 years of that 6-year period, you sold a bunch of vacation. The next 3 years of that 6-year period, right before retirement, you sell no vacation, you cash out no vacation. You've made more money during that first 3 years, and so your final compensation period is going to shift to encompass that time when you sold vacation. So selling vacation could shift what your final compensation period is, because at Acera, and what our software does is we are looking for your absolute highest pay periods, consecutive pay periods anywhere in your career, and that's what becomes your final compensation period. Okay, and for the CalPERS question, I'm going to address that when I get to the screenshots about that show the benefit estimator. Let me just do a time check here. Okay. So just real quick, here are there are some limits on your monthly benefit payments. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this because they don't apply to most people. So for for this first one, the limit is that you can't make more than 100% of your retirement allowance can't be more than 100% of whatever we calculate your highest average salary to be. So basically, you can't make more in retirement than you were making while you were working, sort of, because like we were just saying, your highest average monthly salary could get a bit bigger if we include vacation compensation in it. But basically, it caps you at 100% of your highest average monthly salary, and usually you have to work 35, 45 years to get anywhere close to that. And our members tend to retire on average with 20 years, so most people don't hit that cap. The next two caps are for really high earners, and so you can read that information on your own. If your salary is more than this per year, then you fall into these date ranges, so you can read that on your own. For Tier 4 members, you do have a salary cap of what we can include in the calculation for you. So this is the annual salary. So if you make more than this per year, we're only going to include up to this and then average it as your highest average monthly salary. So that's the downside to Tier 4. The upside is that we won't take contributions from you for any salary you make above these amounts to make up for that. So then if you want to, you could take that salary that would have been contributed to the retirement system, and you can put it in a deferred compensation account. Okay, so another question about the retirement calculator that I will address in just a minute. Okay, so on to estimating, actually getting an estimate of your retirement. So there's a couple of ways to do this. The first way is a ballpark estimate. So you'll see this on your worksheet. It's on the front page. So getting a ballpark estimate is the first way, and then I'll show you how to get a precision estimate with the online calculator. So for the ballpark estimate, what you're going to do is you're going to put in your retirement age. So let's say that it's 58. And then in the scenario that you're doing, let's say that you will have earned 29 years of service credit by this time. Okay. So what you need to do is take those two numbers, and you need to go out to this page on our website, and there is a chart that will give you a percentage. So let me see if I can just go to that real fast and show that to you. Okay, so are you all seeing my web browser, I hope? If that's not happening, let me know. Okay, so you go out to acera.org/ballpark, and there are these charts here. Okay, so since we're just going to stick with the Tier 2 general examples because most people are in Tier 2 general, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then you come to this chart, and so we were using the example of age 58 with, what was it? 29 years of service. So you come down to the years of service credit, you go 29 years of service, come over here to age 58, 50.03%. So basically in this scenario, you're going to get 50% of your salary in retirement. Okay. So then coming back over to the presentation, let me know if any of the visuals aren't working here. So you would put that number in right here, so 50%. Okay, so now you know what percent of your salary, just a ballpark percent of your salary you're going to get in retirement. So then you just take your salary and just an estimate of your salary, and you put it in there, and then you multiply those together, and that gives you an estimate of what you're going to get in retirement. So that's just like a kind of like a quick and dirty way to do it. It's possible that this could be slightly overestimated, or it could be slightly underestimated. It's just kind of gets you close. Okay, so let me show you the precision estimate with the online benefit estimator. So the first thing that you're going to need is you're going to do the scenario. So I'm going to retire at some point in the future, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, 3 months from now, whatever it is. You pick a date in the future that meets that scenario, and that's going to be your projected retirement date. Okay. Now your separation date is going to be your last day in active pay status, so that can be the day before. So if you're going to go right into retirement, that is going to be the day before your projected retirement date. If you are planning on stopping work and retiring at a later date sometime down the road, you can do a scenario like that as well with the estimator. So like if you're done working now, you can put in your separation date and then put in a projected retirement date 3 years from now. So you can do that too. But the majority of people are probably going straight into retirement, so you just pick the day before your projected retirement date. Okay, so what's next? You go out to our website. You log into your personal account. So you press the account login button, and you end up in our web member services member portal for you. Okay, so you're going to see this account summary screen first off. If you click on the Estimate a Benefit link, it will take you to the Benefit Estimator. And here is where you put in your projected retirement date and your separation date. So you put those in. You press the Calculate button. So zooming in here, pressing the Calculate button, it will give you a projected amount of service credit that you will have earned in this scenario, and it will give you a projected salary figure for the scenario that you're doing. You do have the opportunity to override your service credit amount, and you do have an opportunity to override your salary amount if you so choose. One reason that some people like to override the service credit is if you want to see the effect that sick leave conversion that I mentioned earlier has on your service credit, you can add that in there. And so what you do is you take this number and you add the fraction of the year that sick leave is going to give you. So for example, in the earlier example, 62.5 days was about 12 work weeks. So that's about a quarter year. So you would add 0.25 to this number and put the new total in this blank to override your service credit. If you're going to retire far in the future and you think you want to increase your salary to see how that's going to affect your retirement allowance, you can do that as well. Okay, so what about this blank here, adding hours of cash vacation compensation? So this is an optional blank, but I can show you what to put in there if you want to put a number in there. And to the question about the retirement calculator not giving immediate estimates online, so this is the retirement calculator, and so this is the way to get an immediate estimate. So if this is not what happens for you when you go in there, maybe you could describe what happens for you in the Q&A. Okay, so here's how this is going to work. If you are going to want to put hours of cash vacation compensation in the estimator, the reason that you might want to do this, going back, the reason that you might want to do this is that whole discussion that we were having about selling vacation or cashing out cashing out vacation, that increasing your retirement allowance, this will help you see how much it increases your retirement allowance if you add hours of cash vacation compensation to here. So what you're going to be doing is asking you for how many hours of cash vacation compensation, how many hours of vacation do you think you're going to get compensation for that are going to be includable in the salary calculation? Okay, so this is how you figure out how much to put in there. So for everyone who's not in Alameda Health System, you come up here and you put in your limit from the chart, from the other table that we just did in the chart. Okay, so let's say that the limit was 12 weeks. What you need to do is calculate how many hours of vacation that is. And so you just simply take the amount of hours you work per week, you multiply it by your limit, and that gives you your limit in hours. Okay. Now for AHS members, you start here and you just put in the hours from the worksheet. Okay, so now what we need to do, the reason that we need to do this, the reason this is important is because you may have already sold vacation that is being included in the benefit estimate and may not know it. And so you're going to need to figure that out. So what you do is you run one estimate. So you follow this instruction. You run an estimate and you leave that field blank. Okay, so let's say that we did that. You run this estimate, you leave the field blank. Now, what you're going to look at is for the salary date range. This is the date range that it is saying is your final compensation period for this retirement benefit estimate scenario that you're doing. If you sold vacation during this date range, that salary, that extra vacation compensation is already included as salary in the calculator when it's doing a projection of your salary. So you're not going to want to include that in the blank, okay? So you just got to think back, did I sell vacation during this date range? If you don't remember, you can give us a call. So now that you know what the date range is going to be, and you think, okay, I did sell a week of vacation during that date range. Okay, so put that in here. And you're simply subtracting that out of this number, what your limit is, and then this is the number you put in the blank right here. So what I'm helping you do there is not overestimate. If you click on this link when you're in the benefit estimator, it will give you a description that's similar to that, but that's how you do that with the worksheet. That's how you avoid overestimating. If you've never sold vacation, all you simply need to do is put your limit in hours in here if you want to see what that limit would give you for the cash out. Okay. So then you can put beneficiary information down here, and then you click Get an Estimate. And what you're going to end up with is this retirement benefit estimate. So if I zoom in here, this is the data that it's using to calculate the estimate. And then this is your retirement allowance estimate for each one of the different retirement options. And I'll explain those options in the second half of the presentation. So for right now, you can just look at this number right here because this is the unmodified option. It pays the most retirement allowance. So that's kind of your basic precision retirement allowance estimate for this scenario. And that is what you would put in the blank here in the worksheet. Question is, what if the Get Estimate button online is not active? Have you my question to you would be, have you put in dates and hit calculate, and has it given you a projected service credit and projected salary? If not, there may be an error in the dates you're choosing. You may be choosing dates where you're not yet eligible to retire. So maybe you can type that back in if that's the case or not. Okay, so there is, and we'll take a break in just 1 minute. There is a way, if you don't want to do this, either one of these ways of doing an estimate, you can submit an estimate request to us from our forms page. What's going to happen with that estimate request is you're going to send that in to us. It's going to take some time to get to us. One of our retirement specialists is going to take that and put it in a queue, and the queue is based on how soon your retirement is. If your retirement is really soon, it'll go to the top of the queue. If it's not too soon, then there will be a little bit of a wait for them to calculate that. Then they're going to use the same software. It's called Pension Gold that this online portal uses. So it uses the same math. So you're going to get the same results. So my advice is that if you use this system and get this retirement benefit estimate, this is available 24/7. And you can do as many of these as you want for as many different scenarios as you want, and it's the same math, and it's a precision retirement estimate. But if you have any questions about the accuracy of it, or if you're like suspicious of any of the numbers, definitely feel free to send that retirement estimate request into us, and we'll go in and do that calculation for you. So we talked about understanding your benefits, and we talked about getting a retirement estimate. So now I'm going to help you verify your retirement eligibility. So we're talking about this milestone on the milestone chart. So if you're in tiers 1, 2, and 3, there's 3 different scenarios that give you the eligibility to retire. Scenario 1 is that you're over age 50, you have at least 5 years of service credit, and you have at least 10 years of membership. So it's at least 10 years from your date of entry, and you're over age 50, you have at least 5 years of service credit, then you can retire. Option 2 is that you can have any amount or you can be at any age and have 30 years of service credit as a general member or 20 years of service credit as a safety member. Option 3 is you're age 70 with any amount of service credit. So even if it's less than 5 years, you can still retire under option 3. For tier 4, the 10 years of membership thing doesn't apply. It's just 5 years of service credit, and you're over age 52 as a general member or 50 as a safety member. Or you can be age 70 and retire with any amount of service credit. Let me know if there's questions on that. So now that you know what your retirement eligibility date is, if it's in the future, you can go ahead and project what it's going to be. If it's in the past, you can put whatever it was in there if you want, but if you already know you're eligible to retire, you don't have to worry about it, because the eligibility date isn't super important. It's just knowing that you are eligible. Okay, so we've established when you're eligible to retire and whether you're eligible to retire. So now let me help you choose your retirement date. So we're looking at this milestone right here, choosing your retirement date. This is a date that you choose. So there are 7 things that we're going to look at here in finding the best day to retire. Let me go through each one of these. So will you have enough income? Is the first thing that you're going to want to think about. This just is simply about doing a little calculation, doing a little math ahead of time, just to see what the picture is going to look like after retirement, just to make sure you're really ready. So you're going to want to get an Acera retirement estimate. So use our benefit estimator, get a retirement estimate. If you have a deferred compensation account, go ahead and contact them or log into your account, see how much is in there. That gives you an idea of like how much more money you have to play with in retirement. Okay, then go ahead and get a Social Security estimate. If you pay into Social Security, if you're a general member and you pay into Social Security, see what they estimate they're going to pay you whenever you become eligible. If you have any other pensions like the CalPERS person, you'd get an estimate from them. So they probably have an estimator on their website, kind of like ours. So you get an estimate from them. So basically what you're trying to get a picture of is your retirement income in retirement. How much you're going to be bringing in retirement, because you're not going to have your job anymore. So you're going to need income in retirement. And then you're thinking about your post-retirement income, and then you're also going to want to think about what kinds of expenses you're going to have in post-retirement. Just kind of in general. You can do this really general, or you can get really detailed with this. But you just want to get kind of an idea of if you can pay for your life in retirement. And if these things don't get you there, then maybe this needs to be adjusted, or maybe you need to adjust your retirement date a little bit out, like maybe work another year or something like that. Or adjusting expenses, move to a cheaper place or something like that. So it's all I'm saying is it's a good idea to just think about this a little bit ahead of time, just to get a picture of it. Financial planners will say that you need 70 to 80% in retirement. You need 70 to 80% of the income you were making before retirement in retirement. So whatever you're making right now, you're going to need 70 to 80% of that to maintain your standard of living. They say it's 70 to 80% because your expenses are going to go down in retirement. You're not going to have to pay into Social Security anymore. Social Security, you're not going to have to pay Social Security or the Medicare tax anymore. You're not going to have to pay into Acera anymore. You are not going to pay for commuting and business attire and restaurant lunches if you eat out. So all that stuff. So all that combined, they say, means that you will only need about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income in retirement. Okay. Number 2, age factor percentage dates. So this goes back to what I was telling you at the beginning of the presentation about the age factor percentages and when they increase. Remember, they increase every quarter year based on your birthday. So if you have not yet reached the maximum age factor for your tier, so for tier 1, that's age 60. I'm sorry, age 62. For tier 2, it's age 65. Tier 4, it's age 67. And for the safety members, for tiers 1 and 2B, it's age 50. For the other 2 tiers, I don't quite remember, it's like 55 maybe. And then I can't remember what it is for tier 4. But if you have not reached those ages yet, you are still going up in the age factor chart every time 3 months passes based on your birthday. So let's take the January 15th birthday example to illustrate this. So let's say your birthday is January 15th. So 1 quarter after your birthday would be April 15th. 2 quarters after your birthday would be July 15th. 3 quarters after your birthday would be October 15th. And then back to your birthday of January 15th. So every time you pass one of those days, you go up 1 notch in that age factor chart, you get a slightly higher age factor percentage. Okay, let's say that you're thinking about retiring in the summertime. And you're thinking, oh, July 14th looks good. Let's say it's like a Friday or something. It seems like a nice day to retire. I'm going to retire on July 14th. Don't do that. Because if you just wait 2 days, if you just work July 15th, retire on July 16th is your first day of retirement, you go up 1 notch in the age factor chart, you get a slightly higher age factor percentage. That increases your retirement allowance by a little over 1% just by waiting 2 days, okay? So just be cognizant of those days if you have not reached the maximum age factor percentage for your tier, which if you go back to the age factor slide, it's the blue box for each tier. Okay, so the same goes for each one of these days. So you're working on that day, retiring the day after, and that gives you the higher age factor percentage. Okay, so number 3, cost of living adjustment increase. This is an annual increase that all retirees get to their retirement allowances. It's posted on April 1st of every year. So everyone who's in retired status as of April 1st, which means your last, it says retired as of March 31st. That's incorrect. It's actually the first day of retirement can be April 1st. Your last day of work can be March 31st. And you will get the cost of living for adjustment for that year in your first year. If you retire on April 2nd, You're going to miss that cost of living adjustment, but you'll get whatever next year's cost of living adjustment is when April 1st comes around, and you'll get it every year after that. Every time April 1st comes around, you get the cost of living increase. Now, it's based on the Consumer Price Index for the Bay Area, which is a measure of inflation. So basically, if prices go up from December to December in the Bay Area, however much they go up, that becomes the cost of living adjustment. But there is a maximum annual limit on the cost of living adjustment. So for Tier 1, it's 3%. Tiers 1 and 3, it's 3%. Tiers 2 and 4, it's 2%. So what happens if inflation is more than the limit? Let's say it's like 5%. Well, the additional percentage points that we can't give you this year, we put in your COLA bank for years in the future for when inflation is lower than the limit. So let's say inflation comes around next year and it's 1%. We'll take percentage points out of your COLA bank and add it to the 1% to get you up to your limit. So that means that for most members, if you've been retired at least a few years already, you have percentages in your COLA bank because inflation tends to be a little bit higher than 3%. And you just always get the maximum limit, especially Tier 2 members. If this is your first year of retirement, you won't have any banked COLA percentages, but you'll just get whatever the cost of living adjustment is for that year. So for example, this year, we always know what the cost of the COLA is in February, in early February. It's 2.5%. So all the new Tier 2 and Tier 4 members who retire before April 1st of this year are going to get 2%. And all new Tier 1 retirees and Tier 3 retirees are going to get 2.5% for this year. All the Tier 1 and Tier 3 retirees who retired over a year ago, they have banked percentages. They're going to get the maximum 3% because we're going to take percentages out of the COLA bank to get them up to 3%. Okay. Okay, question. The question is, if I defer retirement until I have 10 years, can I use any banked vacation or sick leave? Okay, so deferring retirement means that you stop working but don't retire yet. You're not going straight into retirement. You're like, I'm done working, but I'm not going to retire yet. I'm going to defer my retirement to a later date. So what happens when you do that is you become what we call a deferred member. So right now, if you're actively working, you're an active member. If you stop working here, but you don't retire yet, like the CalPERS member is a deferred member with Acera, but is an active member over at CalPERS. And then when you retire, you're a retired member. So the deferred membership is kind of the in-between state between active membership and retired membership. Not everybody's going to do that. Many people are just going to go straight into retirement. So if you do defer, what happens is you lose all your sick leave. So that just disappears. So you don't get paid for it. You don't get service credit for it. You don't get that back. And regarding vacation leave, they will cash you out for your vacation leave that you haven't used yet, up to 2 times your accrual rate. And you'll get compensation for that. And if you are making the highest pay at the end of your career, that will increase your salary. If you're in Tier 2, that will increase your salary for the salary calculation. And so that will increase your retirement allowance. Alternatively, you can use your vacation and get service credit for it, but not salary credit for it. But it's not as good. Yes, you'll get more service credit, but it doesn't boost your retirement allowance like it does if you get salary credit for your vacation. So you would want to sell and or cash out your vacation, and that would give you that retirement boost. Hope that answers your question. Let me know if it doesn't. Okay. So then the number 4 thing we're thinking about when choosing your retirement date is what happens if there's a dilemma between the age factor percentage and the cost of living adjustment. Okay. So you're thinking about, this is usually about if you're thinking about retiring in the spring. So let's do an example. Let's say that you're a general member, you're age 60, and your birthday is January 15th again. The reason I'm saying general member age 60 is because this person is under the maximum age factor for their tier. Okay, and you're retiring in the spring. Now you're thinking, should I retire April 16th or April 1st? If I retire April 16th, I'm going to get the age factor increase because this is 1 quarter after my birthday. But I'm going to miss the cost of living adjustment that I would have gotten had I retired on April 1st. Or should I retire on April 1st, get the cost of living adjustment, but I'm going to miss the age factor increase I was going to get in another couple of weeks by retiring on April 16th. Which do I do? Well, you probably already know the answer because I already told you the percentages. But if the cost of living adjustment is the maximum, you're going to go with the cost of living adjustment because you're going to get a 2% increase or a 3% increase. Tiers 2 and 4, 2% increase. Tiers 1 and 3, 3% increase for doing the cost of living adjustment versus the 1% increase you're going to get. It's a little over 1%, but not much. You're going to get for the age factor increase. So you would just go ahead and miss this, and you would just take the COLA. Now, every time the COLA comes around, yes, there is a period after April 1st where it would have been better for if you had retired on April 1st or slightly before April 1st. If you retire on April 2nd, you're going to make less money than if you had retired on April 1st most years, whenever there's a CPI increase. But that quickly resolves itself within maybe 2 to 3 months. So if you retire in the summer, instead, you're going to earn more service credit. And maybe like if you retire in this scenario after July, you will go up another notch in the age factor chart for July 16th. And the age factor percentages and the more service credit combined will beat the increase that you would have gotten for the cost of living adjustment. So if you're going to retire at any point in the rest of the year that's not the spring, you don't really need to think about the cost of living adjustment so much. You just want to think about those age factor percentage days. And if you're already over the maximum age factor for your tier, then you don't even need to worry about the age factor percentage days. You've already got the maximum age factor percentage. And so you just think about the COLA if you're retiring in the spring. If not, retire anytime you want, because there's nothing that's really magical about April 1st. And a lot of people retire in March, like leading up to April 1st, or retire on April 1st, just because they're already thinking about retiring, and they're like, well, I don't want to retire immediately after April 1st because I'm missing out. So I'm going to go ahead and retire in April and get that immediate increase. But if you want to retire in December, October, August, those are all fine months to retire. Just be cognizant of those age factor percentage dates if those still apply to you. Okay, the next thing is you're going to want to retire on the day after your last day in active pay status. Okay, so you can be on leave this week. You can take 3 weeks of vacation at the end. It's just that whatever your last day that you normally work in active pay status, that is going to be what you're going to say is your last day of work, and then your first day of retirement should be the next day after that. Okay, that causes you to go straight into retirement, and that's how you don't spend any time as a deferred member and you don't lose your sick leave. The first day of retirement is the next day after your last day in active pay status. Okay, the next one is slightly related, which is you want to retire on a day where you were scheduled to work the day before. Okay, so it's a non-holiday day. I don't remember why that's the case. They say don't retire on a non-holiday day. I can't remember the reason, but retire on a non-holiday day where you are scheduled to work the day before. So, for example, if you work Monday through Friday, you don't retire on Sunday or Monday because you weren't scheduled to work those 2 days before that on Saturday and Sunday. If you do that, that will cause that break where you'll have to spend like a day or two as a deferred member, and you'll lose all your sick leave. Okay, so I'm getting a question. Okay, so the question is, if you use some paid leave after your last physical work day, you lose your sick leave accrual? No. So let me go back a slide. Okay, so let's say that you are using your leave balances. So let's say that you're on vacation this week here, the 20th to the 24th. You're still in active pay status. You're still using your earned accruals, and this is your last day of work. It's also but like when you're on leave, you're still considered to be an employee. You're still in active pay status. You're still an employee. So you just leave. Your last day of employment is the day before, should be the day before your retirement date. So you can be on leave this day, on vacation leave, on floating holidays, comp time, sick leave, whatever any of those leaves are, you can be on leave as long as your last day as an active employee is the day before your retirement date. And that causes you to go straight into retirement, and then we'll do the sick leave conversion for you. Otherwise, you lose your sick leave. And when it comes down to it, when you go to your counseling session, the counselor will help you through this. This actually isn't a big deal. Like it's pretty easy to pick this day. But I just want to emphasize this for the time being. And so, like I was saying, and you pick a day where you're normally scheduled to work the day before. So in this scenario, this person's working Monday through Friday. They're scheduled here. They were scheduled to work here, but they're on leave maybe, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're working it. You go right into their retirement. If you have an abnormal schedule, like I know some sheriff's deputies and physicians and nurses have abnormal schedules. It's just you look at your schedule, and if you work like 3 random days that week, your first day of retirement is the next day after one of those days. Okay. And then finally, don't retire on July 1st. Pick any other day, because all of those vacation compensation limits that I showed you when we were doing the worksheet, those are all lower if you retire on July 1st. And it has to do with the fact that you're not straddling fiscal years when you retired. So your final compensation period is lined up with the fiscal year exactly, and it doesn't, the details don't really matter. It's just pick any other day. June 30th is a wonderful day to retire. July 2nd is an amazing day to retire. Okay. Okay. So now that we have discussed choosing your retirement date, maybe you want to change what your projected retirement date is, or maybe you want to write it in there if you haven't already written it in there yet. And then you probably have an idea of what your separation date is going to be. So like it's probably going to be the day before that. So you can go ahead and write that in there. If you are planning on becoming a deferred member, though, your separation date would be whatever your last day of work is, and then your projected retirement date would be some ways out from that. Okay, let me do a time check here. Okay, so we have about an hour left, so that's perfect. Okay, so let's talk about the retirement application process. Let me help you understand what that entails. So here's what it looks like. Here's your first step in the retirement application process. The first step is to go through our Ready to Retire section on our website, because there's a lot more detail there than I have time to go through in the presentation. It's going to talk about providing, we need to have some documents on file for you. It's going to talk about changing your Web Member Services username, which is our member portal that you log into. It's going to talk about notifying your department, etc. So go through that and get familiar with the different steps in that section. And it's in reverse chronological order. So it starts with the things that you should think about maybe a few years before retirement, then like 6 months before retirement, and so on and so forth. Okay, step number 2. This is purely optional, but is highly recommended. Set up a Ready to Retire counseling session with Acera. So what you're going to do is call Acera 3 to 6 months before your retirement date to allow us to fully prepare and for you to fully prepare. And when you do that call, there are specialists are going to do kind of like an initial screening. They're going to kind of look through your documents a little bit, and they're going to give you some information about documents you still need to provide, and then they're going to set up a counseling session for you within the 60-day period before you retire. So whatever your retirement date you're projecting it to be, they're going to set up the counseling session within the 60-day period before that. So then your next step is to submit a retirement application, and you do that within that 60-day period before your retirement date is when we can accept it. And you can submit your retirement application at your session, and it's a good idea to do that. You can mostly fill out your application before the session, and then you can finalize it and sign it during the counseling session. During that counseling session, they are going to have you also sign an option election agreement, which is you're going to select from one of 5 retirement options. And you're going to get that in the mail a couple of weeks before the counseling session, and you can submit that at your session. Okay, now going back to these 3 items, since we're in the scenario that we're in, where we are all keeping social distancing, and our Acera's offices are closed for the time being, we are working out a way to do the counseling over the phone, possibly by video. Like with this platform, and with the video, you'd be able to converse back and forth with the counselor if we were able to make that happen. So what I've been told is that if you already have a counseling appointment set up for this period now where we're under quarantine, then you'll get a call from us, and we'll be able to do that over the phone, and we'll figure out how for you to be able to sign those documents electronically. And submit those to us. And we're going to be providing all of those documents electronically out on our website, including the option election agreement. So that's how that's going to work for the time being. And then after that period passes, then we'll be able to resume our counseling sessions again. Okay, so then once your retirement date passes that you wrote down on your retirement application, you're retired. So that's how that works. So now that you know what date to call for your ready to retire counseling session is, it's 6 months before this date, 3 to 6 months before there, but might as well just subtract 6. You can go ahead and write that in there. Okay, you can expect your first retirement check within 4 to 6 weeks after your last employer paycheck. If there are any major issues with your file, then what we will do is pay 80% payments until we resolve the issues. So you're still going to get that first check within 4 to 6 weeks after your last employer's paycheck. It'll just be a slightly lower check until we resolve the issues that allow us to do the final calculation, and then we'll start issuing you 100% payments plus retro payments for any 80% payments that we made. Okay, here are your retirement allowance options. There are 5 options here. There's the unmodified option and options 1 through 4. So I mentioned earlier that this is what you're going to select on that election agreement during your counseling session or right before retirement. So that is your only opportunity to make the selection. So whatever selection you make, you can't choose something else later in retirement. So whatever selection you make is locked in. For each one of these options, I'm going to show you a slide, and the top row is going to talk about what you're eligible to receive as a retiree. So like what your retirement allowance is going to be basically. And then the bottom rows are going to talk about what your beneficiaries will be eligible for after you pass away. So your beneficiary, a beneficiary just simply means somebody who gets benefits. So in the context of Acera, it's somebody who gets your Acera death benefits after you die. So that's who your Acera beneficiary is. Okay, so the unmodified option. This is the one that the most people select because it pays the most of any of the other options to you as a retiree. So it's the maximum retirement allowance you can get. So after your death, it pays a 60% monthly continuance to a spouse or state-registered domestic partner who is eligible, and they're eligible because you've married them or registered them at least 1 year before retirement. And it's going to pay them that continuance every month for the rest of their life. Now, a continuance simply means a continuing payment. So it's like you're getting your retirement allowance every month, and then after you die, your beneficiary is going to get a continuing payment every month for the rest of their life. That's what a continuance is. Alternatively, if you don't have a spouse or state-registered domestic partner, but you have a minor child or minor children, they can get the continuance, but it's not for the rest of their life. It's temporary, and it's going to stop at age 18 unless they maintain enrollment as a full-time student in an accredited school, and then it can continue until 22, at which point it'll stop. Unless they marry or register a domestic partner with the state, and then it will stop at that point. Okay, so if you don't have one of these people, that's okay. You can still select the unmodified option, and you can still get the maximum retirement allowance. And you can even still select a beneficiary under this option. It's just that anyone you select is going to be a beneficiary for a lump sum payment. So they're not going to get continuing payments. They're just going to get a one-time payment at the time of your death, and it's going to be the payment is going to be your accumulated contributions. So your employee retirement contributions that you paid in throughout your career, plus all the interest that you've earned on it that we paid to that balance, minus all of the retirement allowance payments that we've already made to you. So I was telling you all earlier during the break that you're going to get all, if you select the unmodified option, you're going to get all your money back within the first 3 to 5 years of retirement. So everything you paid into the system over your entire career, plus all the interest that you've earned, you're going to get that all back within the first 3 to 5 years of retirement. So that's the good news. The bad news is that if you have a lump sum beneficiary in this, there's not going to be a balance left for them after the first 3 to 5 years because we've already paid you out all of your employee contributions and interest. But it's still good news for you because, like I was saying earlier, everything after that 3 to 5 years for you is pure profit. It's you being able to take advantage of what your employer has contributed to the system on your behalf, and also taking advantage of all the interest that we've earned in the fund as a whole. And like I was saying earlier, the interest actually pays for 75% of your lifetime monthly retirement allowance. So it's a really good deal for you. It's a really advantageous to be able to participate in the defined benefit pension plan and get that lifetime monthly allowance because it's a guaranteed lifetime payment every month for the rest of your life. Okay. Okay, so the question is, if you die before you retire, can your spouse collect a pension or are they stuck with a lump sum? So the answer is that there are, the answer is that if you're already vested, so you already have 5 years of service, then they can collect a monthly pension. And it's going to be based on the unmodified option. No, wait, let me think. Yeah, that's what it is. It's based on the unmodified option, and it's whatever retirement that you have earned up to the point of your death. So it'll be based on all the service credit you've earned up to the point of your death, and then we'll calculate the unmodified option. Excuse me. And they'll get 60%. Yeah, sorry about that. They'll get 60% of whatever your retirement allowance would have been. So it's like we're going to consider you retired at that point, and then they'll get a 60% continuance every month for the rest of their life. So no, they're not stuck with a lump sum if you die before you retire. So there's another scenario here where you retire, you select the unmodified option. You select your spouse or state registered domestic partner as your continuance beneficiary, and then you retire, okay? Now, they die before you do. So if that happens, you can select a new beneficiary, but only for lump sum payments, because the only time that you're allowed to select a beneficiary for a continuance is at the time of retirement. The same thing is true if you get married in retirement. So after you retire, you can still select your new spouse or state registered domestic partner as a beneficiary, but only for lump sum payments. And if you've already exhausted your contributions and interest, then there's not going to be a huge lump sum, although there are little lump sums. Like there's the $1,000 lump sum vested death benefit. If you enroll in one of our healthcare plans, you pay that a month in advance, so we'll refund that. You'll probably die partway through the month, so we owe you a partial month of retirement allowance, so we'll pay them that. So there's some little amounts that would go to the lump sum beneficiary in the case that the contributions and interest are exhausted. Okay, so that's the unmodified option. Option number one is that is the only option that never pays a continuance to anyone at any time. So this is a lump sum to the beneficiary option only. So what this does is it pays a little bit less than the unmodified option. And through some clever accounting, what it does is it increases the time that it takes to exhaust the balance left in your account from 3 to 5 years to 10 to 12 years. And I think it might have something to do with like you're dipping into the employer's bucket a little bit, I think, if I recall correctly. I might be wrong about that. But so that means if you die within the first 10 to 12 years, there would be a lump sum left of contributions and interest for your lump sum beneficiary. But there's no continuance beneficiary under this option. Option number two pays 100% of whatever you were making to your beneficiary. Okay, so regarding your retirement allowance, this is going to pay less than the unmodified option. And so the amount less is going to be based on your beneficiary's life expectancy. So if your beneficiary is significantly younger than you, we're going to expect to have to pay them a lot longer because they have a longer life expectancy, so we're going to pay you less. And that's going to start at the time of retirement is when we calculate that. So whatever your retirement calculation is calculated to be at the time of retirement, that's what it's going to be for the rest of your life, plus cost of living adjustment. Even if your beneficiary dies before you do. So if your beneficiary dies, we're not going to recalculate your retirement allowance. Now, so this pays whatever you're making as a retiree, this pays the exact same amount to your beneficiary. It's 100%. So they're going to get that as a lifetime monthly continuance. So that's the first major thing that option 2 does. The second major thing it does is it expands the number of people, the group of people that you can name as a beneficiary to anyone. And I need to get rid of this. It says with an insurable interest, it's anyone, because you naming them as a beneficiary causes them to have an insurable interest. So you can disregard that. Anyone can be a beneficiary for this lifetime continuance. A lot of people ask about naming their adult children as beneficiaries. And so this would be an option for that, because you can't do that under the unmodified option for them to be a continuance beneficiary. Option number 3 is the exact same as option 2, except rather than paying your beneficiary your exact retirement allowance, it pays 50% of your retirement allowance to your beneficiary. So this is going to pay, again, less than the unmodified option, but it's going to pay more than option 2 because we're paying the beneficiary less. We're paying them like half of what you were getting. And again, the reduction is based on your beneficiary's life expectancy. And all the same rules apply as option 2. Okay, option 4, Option 4, the final option, is if you want to specify multiple beneficiaries for a continuance. So if you have 2 adult children, you can't pick up the unmodified option because they're not minors. And you can't pick options 2 and 3 because you can't have multiple beneficiaries under those options. You can only have 1 beneficiary. Option 4 is the one where you can have multiple beneficiaries for a lifetime continuance. And you specify the dollar amount or the percentage that you want each beneficiary to get, and then all the same, and then otherwise it's the same as options 2 and 3. The reduction, how much less this pays than the unmodified option, is going to be based on the youngest beneficiary's life expectancy. Okay, so you know what all the 5 options are now, and what they pay you, what they pay your beneficiaries. So if you want to get an idea of how this plays out for you specifically, what you do is you go back to the benefit estimator in Web Member Services, and you do your scenario, and what you do is you make sure that you put in correct beneficiary information here. So you may hit the drop down and you may see beneficiaries you've already selected as your active member beneficiaries. If they're already in there, great, you can select them and it'll populate. If not, you can just type it all in. The key thing here is the date of birth. So if you do select from the drop down, make sure the date of birth is correct, because some of them are incorrect and it'll throw off the calculations. And then you hit Get Estimate, and you end up with the benefit estimate again. So let me zoom in here. And what you're looking at, and what you'll notice now that you know what the options are, is that it gives you an estimate for each one of the options. Sorry. So let's see what the unmodified option estimate is. Option 1, option 2, and option 3. It doesn't estimate option 4 because the math is complicated. So you have to submit a retirement estimate form to get an estimate for option 4 if you are interested in that. You'll notice a few things about the estimate. The unmodified option pays the most, is the highest number. Option 1 is slightly less than the unmodified. You'll notice that the beneficiary allowance here is going to be 60% of this number. You'll notice that option 2, the numbers are the same because it pays you the same amount as it pays the beneficiary after you die. You'll notice that option 3 is going to be more than option 2, and this is going to be 50% of this number because option 3 pays 50% to the beneficiary. There's 2 more numbers down here. If you're interested in option 1, this gives you the total balance of the account, and then this tells you how much is going to come out of that every month through your retirement allowance payments. So you can project how long that money is going to last in there to a lump sum beneficiary. So you just simply take the big number and divide by the little number, and that'll tell you how many months it'll last. And then you divide by 12 to get the amount of years it'll last. And like I said, it'll last 10 to 12 years. And there will be a lump sum in there for 10 to 12 years. Okay, so those are the retirement options, choosing your retirement date, and the retirement process. Okay, let's see. 11:25, that's perfect. Just enough time to talk about healthcare. Okay, so may help you understand the other benefits that Acera offers. There is this group of benefits that are known as non-guaranteed benefits, also known as non-vested benefits. And you can tell from the name that they're not guaranteed. So these are not like the vested benefits, which are guaranteed by state law. These are extra benefits which your employers, the county and the employers, decided at some point in the past that it would be a good idea to offer these to retirees to help them pay for the costs of some of these types of things in retirement. And so they started this reserve fund to pay these benefits. So all of these non-guaranteed benefits come out of this reserve fund called the Supplemental Retiree Benefits Reserve. The Board of Retirement Acera's Board of Retirement, they're the ones that monitor this fund. They basically administer this fund. So they monitor it for sustainability, and they determine what the benefits are, what the level of benefits are that are going to be paid out, and who qualifies for the benefits, because their goal is ensuring the sustainability of the fund in the future. So when they're monitoring this every year, if our actuary does projections, and if they find that it's becoming less sustainable, they may reduce or eliminate some of the benefits to keep the fund sustainable. So that's just like a kind of footnote about that. These are not guaranteed. Okay. Currently, the board has set up this structure for Acera members to qualify for these benefits. It's based on years of Acera service credit. And you can see that for only one of them, there's no years of Acera service credit to qualify, which is the supplemental cost of living adjustment, which is an extra cost of living adjustment on top of the vested cost of living adjustment. For all the other ones, it is at least 10 years of Acera service credit that you need to have to qualify. And so for the medical subsidy, which is the monthly medical allowance, there's also a couple more milestones here. If you hit 15 or 20 years, you get more monthly medical allowance, or you're eligible for more monthly medical allowance. So let me talk about each one of these a little bit and show you some of the healthcare plans and give you an idea of what the healthcare picture is going to look like after retirement. Okay. So the first one is the monthly medical allowance. So this, like I said, it's not guaranteed. What this does is it offsets the cost of being enrolled in one of Acera's sponsored medical plans. So you're not going to be on your employer's plan anymore. If you want, this is purely optional, because you won't have access to your employer's plan anymore. I mean, you can take the COBRA option, but it's going to be expensive. So a better option, if you want healthcare, is to get it through us. We offer healthcare plans. And if you're eligible for the monthly medical allowance, you are eligible for that to offset the cost of being enrolled in one of our medical plans. But it doesn't cover outside plans. It's only Acera sponsored plans. And there are group plan options and individual plan options. And they cover, group plans cover premiums, individual plans, the monthly medical allowance covers premiums, copays, and deductibles. The amount of the monthly medical allowance is set annually by the Board of Retirement. You, the retiree, are responsible for any costs, medical costs exceeding whatever that monthly medical allowance subsidy is, and it's only for you, the retiree. So it doesn't pay for the costs of your beneficiaries, survivors, spouses, former spouses, dependents, so on and so forth, although you can enroll them in the coverage. Okay. It's like I said, it's based on years of Acera service credit, and you can see that there are kind of 3 levels here based on those years. So the lowest level is if you have at least 10 years of Acera service credit, and I keep saying Acera service credit because reciprocal credit doesn't count here. So if you have like nine years at Acera and then 20 years at somewhere else, and you have reciprocity, that doesn't get you over the 10-year mark for this. You have to have at least 10 years of Acera service credit. So the first level is $289.33. Second level is when you have at least 15 years of Acera service credit. Third level is the full monthly medical allowance of $578.65 with 20 or more years of Acera service credit. Okay, so let me show you some of the healthcare plans, and you can see how much of the plans these amounts pay for. We have 2 categories here, or I'll just separate them out into 2 categories, which is non-Medicare plans and Medicare plans. You're Medicare eligible currently if you're age 65 or older or with certain qualifying conditions. Medicare is the federal government's healthcare system. If you're not eligible for Medicare, you would be choosing among these plans. And if there's any safety members who are participating who are over 65, you are Medicare eligible It's just that there's going to be an additional cost for you, but everyone over 65 can enroll in Medicare. Okay, so our open enrollment is every November. So that's your opportunity to pick a plan, change plans, drop plans, all that stuff. But you can also get into one of these plans with qualifying events. Retirement is a qualifying event, so you can go right into one of these plans at the time of retirement. Other qualifying events are moving, getting married, getting divorced, death, birth, and there might be a few more, and they're on our website. Okay, so you'll notice there's 3 companies here: Kaiser Permanente, United Healthcare, and Via Benefits. So let me start off with the non-Medicare eligible plans, and then I'll talk about Medicare plans. And I'm just going to give you kind of like the super abbreviated version of the plans. The full plan details are in our retiree enrollment guide that we publish every year that you can find on our website. And you'll get this in the mail every year in retirement. And this is a PDF version that you can get on our website. So here are the costs and copays associated with the non-Medicare group plans. To enroll in one of these 3 plans, you must live in the California service areas. They're based on zip code. In general, they are the Bay Area, Sacramento area, Fresno, Southern California, and for Kaiser, they just added Santa Cruz for this year. So if you live in one of those areas, you can enroll in one of these plans. If you live outside those areas, or live out of state, then you have different options, which I'll show you in a minute. You would be it's an individual plan option through Via Benefits. So you can see that the self premium for the cheapest plan, Kaiser, $785.44. Even the lowest monthly medical allowance amount doesn't cover that. The lowest amount was, I think it was $578. And so if you enrolled in this just yourself in the Kaiser plan as a non-Medicare person, you would still end up having to pay $200 out of pocket per month to be enrolled in the plan, even at the 20-year monthly medical allowance level. And then you can enroll in self plus 1 and family members and pay these premiums. And the copays are all $15. Now, these 2 plans are pretty much the same plan. This one is cheaper because it's 23.5% cheaper because you have to stick to this designated high-performing network, which is like a narrower network of doctors and providers that you can choose from. But what the county found out when they studied it, because they're the ones that negotiate all these plans, is that most people who are enrolled in this higher cost plan were already picking providers in the lower cost plan anyway, and so there was no detriment to them going into this lower cost plan because they got the same providers. That's the way to, if you want United Healthcare, that's the way to keep the cost down for that. Okay. Now, if you have the monthly medical allowance, if you're eligible for it and you enroll in one of these plans, or one of the group plans in general, here's how the money is going to move around. So here's your Acera check stub. This is like a basic, PowerPoint version of it. So here's your check stub, and you have your gross pay, your gross retirement allowance. We're going to deduct your premium for your healthcare plan that you enroll in from your Acera check, and we're going to send it over to the healthcare plan for you. Then we're going to put in your monthly medical allowance that you're eligible for back into your check in the additions column. And so you end up with your net retirement allowance after these deductions and additions. One thing I will say about this and all of the non-vested benefits is they're not taxable. This is not taxable income, and this is IRS approved, and so not taxable income. Okay. Now, before I show you the individual plan options, I'm gonna show you the Medicare group plan option, because it's better if I talk about the non-Medicare people and Medicare people who want individual plans and explain it all at the same time. because it's just easier that way and more understandable. So let me tell you about the Medicare group plan option if you are Medicare eligible, or for when you become Medicare eligible in the future. So the only group plan option is Kaiser Permanente Senior Advantage Plan. And what happens with this Medicare plan is you enroll in Medicare. So you do participate in Medicare by enrolling in Medicare Parts A and B through the federal government. Medicare Part A is hospitalization, Part B is doctor's visits. And the service areas that I just mentioned are the same service areas or similar service areas. If you have any questions about whether you're in or out of the service area, you can call Kaiser, or you can call our phone number and ask for the healthcare unit, and they can give you information about that. So you'll see. So here's the premium row. You'll see that here's the self premium for this plan for 2020, $411.54. What I've done for this slide is I've also included what would happen, what it would look like if you have the 20-year monthly medical allowance. If you don't have that, if you have the 15 or 10 year, you would have to do the math out yourself, or look in our enrollment guide because it has all the math done for you. But what I'm illustrating here is that the monthly medical allowance only pays up to the amount of the self premium. So if your self premium is $411.54, that's also your monthly medical allowance amount if you have at least the 15 or 20 year monthly medical allowance. So you don't get the $578, you don't get to keep the change. That stays with the reserve fund. But what it means is that the cost to you is zero. So if you have at least 15 years of Acera service credit, this plan doesn't cost you anything. You just have to pay copays. And then you can enroll self plus one, and there's different premium amounts based on whether your spouse or your plus one, your domestic partner, is eligible for Medicare, like whether you're both eligible, whether one of you is Medicare eligible, and which one you are, whether you're the eligible one or the not eligible one. So you can see how that works out here. Sorry about the decimal places moving down to the next line. So those are the group plan options. Okay, so let's talk about the individual plan options. So who can enroll in an individual plan through via benefits? If you're not yet Medicare eligible, you have to live in the US and you have to live outside of one of the group plan service areas. If you live in the group plan service areas, you got to pick one of the group plans. If you live outside the service area, you can pick one of these individual plans through via benefits. And then if you're Medicare eligible, all you have to do is live in the US and enroll in Medicare. So for Medicare eligible, you can live in the group service area and still enroll in an individual plan. One more option that I didn't write on here is if you want to move out of state into another service area for a different Kaiser site, which is like Washington, Oregon, Maryland, and DC area, I think, Colorado, Georgia, Hawaii. I think that's all of them. You can get an individual plan through Kaiser and still use the monthly medical allowance. Okay. So Via Benefits is a private health insurance exchange that we have contracted with to provide these individual plans. And what they do, they're kind of an insurance broker. They make contracts with 80+ insurance carriers. They offer 1,000 different plans across the US. And what their business is helping you find the plan that's right for you. So what you do when you're ready to enroll is you can go to their website or you can talk to them on the telephone, and you end up talking to a benefit advisor who is certified, salaried, non-commissioned, non-biased. I say that to say that they don't care which plan you get in based on how much pay they get. They just get the same salary. They're going to pick which plan. They're going to help you narrow down the plans to what's right for you. So when you call them, you tell them where you're going to live, how much you want to pay, what kind of coverage you're looking for. You can even go so granular as like what doctors you want and what medications you need, and they'll help you get into a plan. that's right for you. And like I said earlier, the monthly medical allowance can pay, in addition to premiums for this, it can pay deductibles and copays as well. So the way that we pay you the monthly medical allowance, if you're eligible for it, works a little bit differently with VIA benefits, because it can't go in and out of your check. It's because it's too complex for this. So what we do instead is VIA benefits will open up a health reimbursement account for you over at their facility. Over here at Acera, we have your monthly medical allowance here ready to pay out to you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the monthly medical allowance, we're going to send it over to your health reimbursement account at VIA benefits. Okay, now over here is you. This is your bank account. Sorry for the rudimentary illustrations here, where you're a box and your doctor's a box and your insurance company is a box. But this is your bank account, and you are going to incur some costs. You're going to enroll in one of our plans, and let's see if I can get this to work. Sorry, some of the things disappeared here. There was some, sorry about this. There were some dollar signs here. So imagine there's dollar signs in your bank account, okay? $1 sign goes out to your insurance company because you are paying your insurance company for the cost of your being enrolled in their plan. That's your monthly premium cost. Then you're paying your doctor whenever you go to the doctor in a copay. Now what happens is VIA benefits is going to pay you your monthly medical allowance. You're going to submit reimbursement claims to VIA benefits, and they're going to send your monthly medical allowance back to your bank account. And all this stuff can happen automatically. You can set like automatic transfers and monthly recurring payments and monthly recurring reimbursements and all that, and they help you set it up when you call them. And so the only thing that you have to do is if you go to the doctor, you have to submit those claims, and they have an app that you can do that through, or you can do it through their website. So it's a little more complicated, but we try to make it as simple as possible. Okay, so then because for the Medicare VIA benefits plans, they're so much cheaper than all the other plans. The Board of Retirement decided that the monthly medical allowance amounts would be a little bit reduced from the main monthly medical allowance amounts. And we're just talking about Medicare VIA benefits plans, not the non-Medicare VIA benefits plans. So these are the monthly medical allowance amounts for those plans. And we measure every year how many people run out of this money, and it's only about 10%. So 90% of the people, this amount of monthly medical allowance is adequate to pay for the full cost of being enrolled in the plans. Okay, so that's medical coverage and the monthly medical allowance. So on to dental plans. There are two plans here, Delta Dental PPO and Delta Care USA. Delta Care PPO is a nationwide plan. Delta Care USA is California only. And then there's two sides to the table here. You're probably seeing mandatory enrollment here, but don't get alarmed with that, because if you have at least 10 years of Acera service credit, yes, the enrollment is mandatory, but it doesn't cost you anything. The self-premium and the subsidy are the same amount. So if you enroll in the Delta Dental PPO, for example, you'll see 4204 come out of your check. You'll see 4204 go back into your check in the same check, and then you end up paying $0. If you want to enroll Self Plus One, you just simply subtract this number from this number to figure out how much the out-of-pocket cost is. You'll see 8104 go out of your check, 4204 go back into your check. If you don't have 10 years of Acera service credit, you can enroll in the dental plans, but it's voluntary enrollment and the premiums are slightly different. They're a little bit higher. Vision plans are very similar. So if if you have at least 10 years of Acera service credit, you have to enroll in the standard plan, but it costs you $0 because the $4.24 is the premium amount and the subsidy amount. Now you can buy up into the VSP premium plan, which gives you a higher level of vision coverage. One example I know off the top of my head is you get frames every 12 months instead of 24 months that you do with the standard plan. The subsidy is still going to be $4.24 though. So what you would pay is a difference between $14.78 and $4.24. And again, if you have less than 10 years of Acera service credit, it's voluntary enrollment, and then you pay the full amount and there's no subsidy. Okay, the next non-guaranteed benefit is what we call the Medicare Part B reimbursement plan. So when you're Medicare eligible and you want to enroll in one of our plans or maintain enrollment in an Acera plan, we mandate that you pick one of our Medicare plans for a couple of reasons. One, it's cheaper for us. Two, it's cheaper for you. The plans are just cheaper because the federal government is paying for the majority of the cost. Now, there is a cost to you when you sign up for Medicare Part B, which is the doctor's visits portion of it. The Social Security will start charging you a monthly amount that comes out of your Social Security check. For 2020, that amount is $144.60. So what the Board of Retirement has done is they're offsetting the full cost of that. So the rule that they set up for themselves is they'll offset the cost of whatever the lowest amount that any of the retirees are paying. So sometimes there's different levels, but currently there's not different levels depending on when you enrolled. Previous enrollees and new enrollees will all for 2020 pay $144.60 per month for the cost of Medicare Part B. And that's at it is tiered based on income. So if you have a much higher income, you may pay more, but the Medicare Part B reimbursement plan is still going to be $144.60. That's the subsidy. So to qualify, you just need 10 years of Acera service credit, and you just need to maintain your Medicare Part B enrollment, and then you have to enroll in this. And so you have to submit the enrollment form one time to us. We will remind you to submit that whenever you turn 65. Excuse me, because you're going to get an invitation in the mail from us to attend one of our Medicare transition seminars at Acera. And in that seminar, we help you enroll in Medicare, get enrolled in one of our Medicare plans, and then enroll in this subsidy, Medicare Part B reimbursement plan. So you'll get an invitation in the mail from us when you turn 65 in retirement. If you're already 65 and you're still working, you're not going to get an invitation, but you can just go ahead and enroll in one of the seminars on our website. Okay. The next non-guaranteed benefit is the supplemental cost of living adjustment. So what this does is this maintains at least 85% of your original buying power that you had in retirement. You're going to keep that throughout your retirement, because if you ever lose more than 15% to inflation, of buying power to inflation, the supplemental cost of living adjustment kicks in and keeps you at 85% of your original buying power. And so you can't lose more than 15% ground to inflation in retirement. Okay. Let's see, let me do a time check here. Okay, we have 10 minutes left. So I have a question. Is the monthly allowance calculator for previous employees want to retire on the Acera website? Yes. So if you're a previous employee and you're a deferred member because you're working for another agency, like you might be the CalPERS person, you can just go ahead and use the calculator on the website. So you're still a member, a deferred member. with Acera, you're still a member, and so you can create an account on our website and log in and use the benefit estimator. Okay, so understanding life events. I used to talk a lot more about this before I added the worksheet, but I wanted to focus on that, and so I'm not going to say too much about these. You can get more information about each one of these on our website. So if you quit before retirement, so you become a deferred member, you should check out our information on deferring your retirement. There's also information about the death benefits that are available to your beneficiary should you die before retirement. If you get divorced or you dissolve your domestic partnership, that can affect your Acera benefits because California is a community property state. And so if you earned benefits while you were married or while you were in a state registered domestic partnership, those are considered community property, and those are on the table for division during the divorce process. So you should check out that page for more information on that. There is disability retirement, and you probably saw that reference in a few of the slides before. I didn't want to touch on it too much, but I just want you to know it exists. If you ever become permanently disabled and you cannot perform your job duties, you can retire early through a disability retirement. And it's like a whole process that you go through. We have a disability unit here that will help you through it. So there's more information about that on our webpage. Even if you are permanently disabled, but you're already like ready to do the regular retirement, it is a good idea to look into the disability retirement, because if it's a service-connected disability retirement, if it's awarded to you, that part can become non-taxable, so you won't have to pay income taxes on it. If you want to work after retirement, if you're going to go work for anyone else who is not Alameda County or one of our participating employers, we don't care. You just retire from us. We're going to pay you your lifetime monthly retirement allowance, and you can work for however long you want and for whoever you want, and we're just going to keep paying you that allowance and consider you retired. Now, if you're going to come back to work for your employer or one of our other participating employers, there are restrictions and duration limits that you should look into on that page. And then if you're going to move after retirement, go ahead and check out that page, because we want you to keep us up to date on where you're living so we can send you official communications. And then in order to stay up to date with Acera, the best way to do it is to subscribe to our email news. We don't send out much email news, it's just the important stuff, but that's a good way to keep up to date, especially like with office closures that are currently happening and things like that. It's a good way to keep up to date with what's going on with Acera. Okay, so we also have, you can call us anytime. Like if you think of a question after the presentation that you forgot to ask, feel free to give us a call. We have experts that their only job is to answer your questions about how the retirement system works. So that's the end of the presentation, but I'm happy to hang around for as long as you all want and answer the rest of any questions that you have. And I really appreciate you joining me on this. And I just wish you a beautiful retirement and a safe few weeks.